All right. Hey, Quants. I am not in my typical filming location. Got a chance to get out to the mountains early today, or this year. And so this is kind of my home away from home, hanging out in the mountains. And with that said, I'm not sure how well the quality of this video will turn out. So I'm just going to run forward with this anyways, because it is a very important day in the context of cycles. We have the Mercury retrograde happening, and then we also have the spring equinox occurring today. And so, since I'm working on one screen, we'll see. You'll have to bear with me switching back and forth on charts. Hopefully, I won't stumble too much with all the things that I'm trying to juggle on a single screen. Although, I guess I use a single screen typically anyways. It's just the case that this is a much smaller screen and I can't put so much stuff up to the side that's not necessarily within the camera view. So let's go ahead and talk about what's happening with Bitcoin. So we are floating right around 70K right now. Fear and greed has been, depending on where you look, it's around 11. I saw some places where up of 39, but point is we've been sitting in fear for quite a while. Today is the spring equinox, and that bleeds into tomorrow as well, so 20th to the 21st. And as if you've been following, that's one thing I've been posting a lot of content about on X, and then here I've been mentioning that more as I've been getting more comfortable with just being able to speak about that more naturally. And so the spring equinox is basically the date where we have the equivalent number of hours as daylight as we do night, right? So as opposed to the solstices where we have either the shortest or longest day or night of the year. And so these are the four cardinal points that Gann often looked at for major trend shifts. I've spoke about this before, where Bitcoin has been going down for quite a while. Although I will say recently it's just been sitting in a range, and so that range has been, we've been in this range starting about the 5th of February. Of course, we didn't know then because it was still bombing downwards, and then it recovered quite a bit of that candle on the 5th and then just ranged out. And so it did look like we were going to get a breakout on the 17th. That breakout didn't hold, and so we basically are just under, above, right around the top of the range, if you're not counting these two what look to be attempted breakouts. If we're looking at the square 9 data that I did put on the chart here, so I had the basically all the cycle information. We had the news information with the FOMC. We had some astrological stuff with the new moon, and actually looks like this indicator printed it on the, 1 day over, which would have aligned with the Mercury retrograde, or I think I said retrograde before, not retrograde direct. And so, and then also the spring equinox. So I would want to take a look at this and see if that indicator is actually correct or if it's off by a day or so. But in any case, we had all these lining up, and then we had the square 9. So we had this resistance breakout line, and given the breakout, we had some potential targets, and then we had this failure. Right now, we're sitting right under there, and so I think if we get a close here, there is potential that we could go further. One thing I will say, if I'm just looking at the charts and I'm looking at the swing chart, so in particular, the 2-day swing chart, we have a low here, and we are setting above the low here. So this is going to set in the middle. We've got declining volume on the downside here, which could potentially be good. However, if we get a break below this, then I think we're just going to continue falling down into the range and potentially keep going farther. But what I would think, or what I would say would look good here, is we are still trending to the upside on the Gann swing indicator. So if we're looking at the orange one, we had a low, a high, a higher low, and then a higher high. And so this would be a very nice time to put in a lower or a higher low, and then that would give us, in terms of if you entered here, that would give you a really nice place to manage that trade if you weren't just going to straight up cut it from right here, which is something you totally could do and would make a lot of sense. Because of this, the internet here, I think it looks like my screen is jumping around a bit. So Um, the thing that I wanted to couple this into, because I've been posting this on X, I think there's an opportunity for a tactical trade based on a lot of the analysis that I've been looking at in the context of the spring equinox, how the charts or markets tend to behave after the spring equinox. Usually you end up getting bullish price action. However, in the context of a midterm year, that it tends to be a tactical trade opportunity. And so let me switch over to that chart, and let me get back to where I was, just jumping around on the charts a little bit here. Is this the right one? It's not going. Is that it? Okay, there we go. So this should be, let me just give me 1 second to check here. Yep. So now we should be looking at one of the charts that I've been posting on X recently. And so this is just a potential of what things could play out, how things could play out, taking into account how midterm cycles tend to play out. And so with the midterm cycles going back for the last 20 years, we've had 5 out of 6 of the midterm years. The March rally basically was a trap, and so that's what I'm pointing out here. However, as I mentioned before, it still gives you an opportunity for a tactical trade, and so you end up getting a decline. The average here was like a 17.3% average decline. Averages don't necessarily, I mean, that's not how I base things off, but it makes easy statistics, so that's what we have here. And so that's why I say there's a tactical trade opportunity here. And so I will later put up a chart that kind of points out the exact dates for each one of those, but I'm not going to go into that right now because I haven't put that chart together just yet. Or anyways. With that said, this is just looking at the average right now, and then in the context of BTC and the spring equinox and the last midterm years, which was 2014, 2018, and 2022. Again, same concept. Each one of those were, and there's 3 of them, they all tended up going lower after the spring equinox, but you still had an opportunity to make a tactical trade there. And so since I'm talking about all that, one thing I will say is that the tactical trade doesn't mean that it plays out today. It just means it plays out within the next 2 to 3 days of the equinox. And so I'd be looking for something around this time to give us some potential catalyst to see that bullish upside momentum happening. I did see a number of people talking about an opportunity for bullish action. To be fair, I also see people talking about negative potential for bearish and bearish price action. And right now tends to be a fairly confusing time in the market. So that's one thing where I think this potentially could give you an edge. And again, I like to use the statistics. So if you go back and use the statistics, that might be an opportunity for a tactical trade if you're looking at that stuff. Let's see. And since I'm looking at the chart, the last thing that I'll just mention is these kind of play into the averages, meaning that ultimately the price does go down, and then you will see an opportunity statistically to get a better opportunity closer to the end of Q3 or in Q4, where that's where you'd potentially want to be actually putting more of your capital to work. And so if you haven't done some of that research, I would highly suggest you do it. I found it pretty interesting, and I'm just honestly, I'm just really enjoying finding some of the correlations between the astrological stuff or the cyclical stuff, like the equinoxes and the solstices that Gann used to use in the context of trading. It's just fun. It's an interesting thing to do, and it gives me something else to think about other than just straight up looking at price, which I do like price. And I mentioned before, that's one of the reasons I like the Gann swing indicator, because it is just based off of price as opposed to, the trend following system that I use, which is also based off of price, but it lags a little bit more. And so I just like the correlation of all those. I found those to be very interesting. And so the next thing that we have here, if we go back to the charts, I will say I need to stay on that one, and then I need to say, is that it? Make sure focus is here. 3. Nope. There we go. So back to the to the right chart here. Um, and so what I would be looking for here is still looking for a solid close above the 74K to have a trade opportunity up into the 78 and 80K. We have the failure point here. I'm personally going to give it a little bit of play here because it's just right under that line. If you are playing hard statistics, cut it. I think you could use this potential current low as an opportunity to cut it if you want to give it a little bit more breathing room. It really depends on, obviously you have to, play your own game and see where you're at. So, but I personally, I want to give it a little bit more time and see how that's going to play out considering in the context of the spring equinox, it usually takes a few days, 3-4 days or so before we actually see things play out. So with that said, it could totally bomb out to the downside, right? And so holding on could just be a losing game. And I guess the one other thing that I would say is usually you get until sometime in April. And again, I posted some of this information on X about what dates you would look at for the the more likely dates or the earliest dates when you'd potentially want to sell. And so that's the stuff that I'm going to keep looking at. So with that said, that's it for today. I hope everyone's staying safe, enjoying the beautiful weather as I am. I don't know how beautiful it is everywhere else, but it's been great camping for spring break for the kids and all that kind of stuff. It's been a ton of fun. And so I'm just blessed that I get to do this. And I hope everyone has a good one. And we will catch you on the next one. Peace, Quants.